the goal of this workshop and then moving forward out of this workshop is to create a culture of acceptance and support for all the different identities and backgrounds within the athletics program and PLU as a whole. Then also questioning the status quo to some extent. Why does athletics not have that culture already? And then in order to do that, making this workshop specifically an environment to practice that, to screw it up, accept criticism if you do, ask questions. And then because of that agreement to practice here, there's some community commitments, which I believe were in an email I saw. But to go over them again, using I statements, it's an opportunity for you to share your stories and perspective, impact versus intent. Being in community's work, trusting dialogue will bring us deeper in relationship, owning the impact of your words, and listening to understand others' experiences and perspectives as they share them. Engage your learning edges. We're all at different places in our learning and growth. Be comfortable naming that and being uncomfortable, and then practicing the continued opportunities for learning, unlearning, and relearning. Listen, but engage. Actively listen to learn others' perspectives. Don't use your listening ears to not engage. In a virtual space, it's easier to hang back, but we'd love to hear your perspective. Unmute, contribute in the chat, turn your camera on when you're able to. And then I'm going to pass it off to, I think, Danny to start off the first activity.
So I think it's important to, I guess, define salient identity. And what we mean by salient identity is the most prominent or important identity a person holds true to themselves, and how greatly is that identity experienced or meaningful to them. And so what identity comes to you, whether that be race, gender, sexual orientation, age, etc. And so, yeah, we're gonna go briefly discuss, I guess, the questions we'll talk about. Question 1 will be, what is a social identity that people see? And then question 2 is, what is your most salient social identity on the group and team, and why? What is an identity that creates dissonance in your life? And then question 4 is, what is an identity you hope to learn about? So we'll definitely put these in the chat so you can all see them. And then we'll, like Danny said, we'll come back and forth between breakout sessions. Sounds good?
Okay, are we ready to go ahead and disperse? Okay.
What are some things you guys discussed within your breakout rooms? If anyone wants to share about question 1. Okay, Wyatt, go for it.
In our group, so we talked about how a lot of us were white, and something we brought up when talking about it was that because of that fact, we usually have a place of privilege with that fact of when it comes to our identities of being white, and some of us being male, that offers a little more privilege, as well as being heterosexual as well. And so it just really all adds up to a little bit of privilege as well.
I guess I could share a little bit what we talked about. Personally, for me, there's dissonance when it comes to politics and the election, and definitely finding a side to agree upon when there's certain things that you find true for both sides. And so that's how dissonance has come up in my life. And so finding ways to navigate that and talk through is important.
We kind of talked about how, the way you were talking about politics, we were kind of thinking more physical characteristics of a person. And so then we started talking about how politics and things people identify with, that you can't see, along with one of the parts that you can identify with is having parents that have different sexual orientations or whatnot, and how that might not be who the athlete or person is, but it still affects them and their worldview. So it'd be interesting to learn more about.
Thanks for sharing, Larson. So I guess as a debriefing question, it's important to understand salient identities. And so why is it important? And so it's important to understand salient identities because it builds deeper connections between teammates and bonds, because you're honestly getting to pull up the PowerPoint real quick. Yeah, it builds bonds and connections with teammates because you're getting to what a person values and what the person notices most about themselves. And so, for example, for instance, I'm a black runner and I'm also thin. And so, say for instance, I go on a run and I get called like a racial slur, and someone makes fun of my weight. And so, in my opinion, the racial slur will have a greater impact because I value my blackness, and that's like my salient identity. In that same scenario, with the same, I guess, qualifications for someone else, the impact of their weight or their size will have a greater impact. And so, knowing this is super important because it can help you understand when to be empathetic, how to support teammates in certain situations, when and how to uplift teammates, certain compliments you can give that you know will be important and meaningful to them. And so these are all things you should think about when understanding salient identities more. And so I'll pass it on to Danny if he has anything to add.
Yeah.
If not,
That'd be awesome. Hezzy, you're always great. So tough act to follow every time. Yeah, really, it's just from taking away from this activity, I just wanted to highlight, like, you're supposed to get a greater sense of like what your most salient identity. For me, that in America, that is as a white man, that'll always be what in America, what people see me as first. And it's also, I want this activity to kind of highlight just how our role on our team has been and just how diverse our teams can be and what exactly our characteristics can and how they can shape our identity on our team. And that's basically it. So I'm going to pass it on to Sid, Connor, and Peyton for their part of the activity.